Hello, I'm Nick Hodgson from astrogems.com, and I'm going to give a talk today on a subject that I find, for me, incredibly important and incredibly ignored by especially Western society. And that is because in astrology we consider a predestined pattern to be defeatist and, a weakening way of thinking, we tend to avoid that whole concept. But according to the rishis, the Mahatmas, the self-realized Mahatmas of India, when we're born at a scientific time, exactly in synchronicity and harmony with our past actions and thoughts and deeds. There's a reciprocity in the universe that allows us to go with the flow, and we've still got a willpower, we've still got the ability to avoid or mitigate what we've set up in motion that's coming back to us karmically. And I know if I was at school and the school teacher got up and said, okay, boys, some of you are going to have a really terrible time in your 20s because you were bad in a past life, I would have really appreciated that information, because I would have gone, okay, how do I avoid it? How do I avoid it? And it's very defeatist to think of our life as being remotely controlled, directed by outside of our jurisdiction, outside of our will. But nonetheless, all the main philosophies say you sow what you reap. And you can't do that unless you reincarnate, unless it's up to your belief system, whatever. But if you believe that there's a completely fair, rational, just, universal consciousness or intelligence or God or Brahma, there has to be a justifiable cause for why some people suffer terribly, some people are born, with greatly unfair birth defects or whatever. So having said that, I just want to lay out the gravity, because sometimes we have to tell our brain several times that if you evaluate that there's a predestined potential in our life, then how do we make the best of it? How do we avoid, mitigate, nullify some of the really negative things that can happen to us? And in one sense, if you go to the quantum field and you look at everything as being vibration, everything as being waveform, that's probably the best place to start. And there's a quote by Nikola Tesla, if I can quickly find it, who we all love. And he said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And essentially, everything that we've done in the past is electromagnetically drawing itself towards us when it finds the right catalyst. And I pondered, what is that catalyst, years ago? And I used to go to these American Council of Vedic Astrology conferences and talk to some of these quite famous Vedic astrologers who'd written books and were very renowned and very brilliant in their field. And I would say to them, okay, I sell astrological planetary gemstones. They're meant to supplement or help people who wear them if they've got a debilitated cloud in a certain area. How does that work? Because I read all the books and no one had given me answers. And they said, well, emeralds for Mercury and yellow sapphires for Jupiter, and you put on the skin and it helps lessen. And I go, that's just data. I want the mechanism, I want an explanation of how it works. And this is probably, one of the first presentations where I'm going to explain it. And it took me nearly 30 years full-time running Astrogems to figure it out. And it's not because I'm particularly intelligent. It's because I really delve into the words of Paramahansa Yogananda and Swami Sri Yukteswar, who were genuine avatars, meaning they're omniscient, they're one with God, they know the rule book, And it's not something that Yogananda dwelled on in a big way, but he did say in a later publication, which is the interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita, that everything we do, say, or think is recorded vibratorily in our chakras, which is our electrical body. Everything we do, say, or think is recorded vibratorily in our chakras. And when that happens, those recordings stay there. When you die, your astral body, which is your electrical body, death generally always means the absence of electricity. When you go to the astral world, you take your electrical body with you. Your consciousness field is your electrical body. Is this a bit strong? Okay, I'm hearing it. I kind of like sound my voice. So when your electrical body goes to the astral, takes all those recordings, and you spend a long time in the astral world, you know, you have guides and you have help and you have processing, and it's exceptionally beautiful in my understanding. But there's a mathematically appropriate time for you to be reborn. There's nothing unfair. And so you're reborn and your electrical body comes back. And Yogananda explained that at the time of birth is when the spermatozoa penetrates the wall of the egg. And there's a flash in the ether, in the astral world. And you're done, you're in. 9 months of prison in the name of Buddha, you know. And that's one of the punishing aspects of being born. Fortunately, you sleep a lot, but not when you kick and stuff, you know. But, so you're born in the physical body. You got a destined horoscope. There's two horoscopes. There's one actually at the time of that penetration of the egg wall, but nobody knows exactly when that is. So they go from the birth time, and that still has a relativity to it. You look at the child's horoscope, you see these talents, you see these abilities, you see these interesting things in the transits if you've got a good computer program. And all of that is the predestined pattern of that individual soul. So if you've got, say, a fairly negative Jupiter, for instance, which would mean that you can try very hard, you can have a strong will from Mars, but you're not going to attract prosperity, even though you're a really hard-working person. Because something you've done in the past didn't generate wealth. You perhaps gave your inheritance to an alcoholic who wasted all your inheritance, or you did things that didn't generate prosperity for society. You've got poverty karma coming towards you, and you've got to try extra hard. Now, you can surmount it if you work really hard and smart, but if you have a blessed Jupiter, money just falls off trees and you're blessed. You fall into the right profession, you meet the right people, you're appreciated by the right people, and things happen for you. And a lot of that is all electromagnetic. A lot of that is predestined. So the question is, how can you mitigate or nullify your predestined negative karma? And before I go any further, I just want to, there's not too many people here, but I want to everyone to try this on for a few minutes and take it off. And I'm going to go back to what I was just talking about, but this way I want people to have the experience. This is a pure silver chain. Silver, pure silver, not sterling silver, has a resonant, harmonic waveform similar to the moon. So when you introduce one into your electrical body by touching the skin, you're exalting your moon, you're boosting your moon, you're becoming less emotional, you're becoming, well, the opposite of that, but more rational, I suppose, more easygoing about the bumps and lumps of life. So I'm just going to quickly give you some of these and get back to where I thought it'd make it a bit more interesting. And if you, sorry, could you take those out of the bag and pass them around? And everyone wear it for a couple of minutes, and then analyze not only when you're wearing it, but when you take it off, if you notice the change. And so back on the subject of how do you mitigate or nullify these predestined electromagnetically attracted events and circumstances. And there are several ways of doing that. Some of them require effort, some of them are more passive. Probably the most powerful way would be to attract the blessing of a saint. And they don't have to be in the physical body. You can pray to Jesus, you can pray to Krishna, and they're omniscient. They hear every thought of every person on the planet in real time. That's what they say. Some of them say that about others. So that's one way of mitigating or nullifying. If you're sincere and you're appropriate in the way you make that request or require that assistance, you get help. Another way is to do a ceremony using sort of a tantric rituals with a professional pujari. And you can do specific pujas based on your chart to mitigate what could be coming down the pipe. Another way is to use your willpower with discrimination, where you maneuver. I'll give an example. Nearly 40 years ago, a Vedic astrologer told me, your house of transport is very bad in November. It looks like something pretty bad's going to happen. He was a very good astrologer, Ernst Wilhelm. He's written quite a few books. So I went out, I got full coverage, comprehensively, insurance on my car, and that month I was in England, and the car was parked on the street. Drunk driver came around the corner and totaled all four sides of my car, kept on going, got caught, but he had no money, and the insurance paid me out fully. And I only got it full. I never get full coverage, but I only got full coverage because the astrologer told me that. And to me, that was discrimination and wisdom, and I counteracted the financial debit of that event. So you've got discrimination, willpower, and then you've got something that's passive, doesn't require any effort. That's kind of, sign me up for that one. That's my attitude. When I found out 35 years ago, 40 years ago-ish, that Swami Sri Yukteswar wore a 9-gem bangle and that Paramahansa Yogananda wore a 9-gem bangle, it was kind of like, where's mine? Humility is not my middle name. I just kind of like, where is it? And I made some phone calls and nobody made them. And I was staying in an ashram at the time, and the administrator of the ashram wore a 9-gem bangle, and the administrator before him wore a 9-gem bangle. And so I asked permission to go out hunt for gems, and me and a monk went out to gem shows, and the game began. And the first one I made was pretty inferior, but I thought it was a cat's pajamas. And I wore it, and I noticed immediately that my focus and concentration and meditation was just that much better. And for me, that was good enough. And then I lent it to friends, and their reaction was off the scale. I thought they were pulling my leg, and are you really sure? And then they were being sincere. I thought they were ridiculing me because they were so amazed by it. But basically, we go through life, and I'll use a name like, okay, John knows who John is. John knows when he was born, what he likes, what he doesn't like, what he pursues and interests. And all of those things have a vibration, have a consciousness to them. And John's used to being John. John's in a rut, in a pattern. Very few people change out of that psychological antique stage as they get older. So John's going along, boogieing along in life, and he's going to attract whatever predestined karma is coming to him. But if you get in there and you change John's consciousness, and one way John could do it is maybe 6 months in an ashram, or maybe a yoga retreat, or maybe environmental influences that uplift him. But there's another way of doing that, and all John's thoughts and John's way of being are a reflection of his consciousness habits. And if you put something in on John's electrical field that is uplifting, that is sattvic, John's thoughts change a little bit. Might be 5%, might be 10%, but just say it's only 5%, doesn't sound like much. But wait till you see where John is in 10 years' time. He took a different trajectory. He took a different, he became enthused with interests that were not normally what John would have been keen on, And that's an example of how you mitigate karma. Once you change your interests, you're changing your karma. Once you envelop your interest to a greater degree in an uplifting subject, you change your karma. And so if you wear something that interacts with your electrical body, you're changing your karma. And the unique characteristic of crystals, you've got this huge pseudo industry, the crystal movement, the crystal shops, and the outrageous claims. And I often like to think they've taken one acid tab too many in their youth. But the bottom line is there's a science behind all that gobbledygook, behind all those self-appointed intuits. And essentially, a crystal has something called a C-axis. It has a crystal lattice. They've got different geometrical crystals, and On that note, I want to pass out some crystals. Try not to drop them. But essentially, when you get a crystal structure, you get the electrons in alignment, like the photons in a laser beam, like the polarity in a magnet. You have a very special material when you get the electrons in alignment. The electrons are spinning, and they have their orbital shields. But when you get electrons in alignment, you get an energy transfer up and down that geometrical alignment of the crystal lattice. That's why crystals are so unique. That's not to say minerals don't have their role, but crystals, I believe, are much more powerful. Then you add color. Now, a color, as we know, has psychological relationships. Like we think of yellow as joyful, we think of blue as principle, we think of green as Mother Nature and natural, we think of red as anger or energy, Rajasic energy. They have psychological influences. Now, our karmic pattern has every color in the rainbow in many different hues and variations. If you look at it from a cross-index harmonic, in other words, you have the music in a musical scale, an octave, and you play one note and it's got a mood to it, it's got a feeling. When you go to a horror movie, there's a reason why all that dun dun dun, that sound is a certain way. And when you go to watch a beautiful pastoral movie or something, there's a reason why different musical compositions engender different mental forms of consciousness. So it's the same with color, but the difference is when you deliver that color from a crystal and you've got alignment of the electrons, you have to have a very good quality crystal. You have to have a deeply colored crystal with a great alignment of the electrons. You've got an ability in that crystal to shift the psychological state a little bit. And I have a certain bangle. I created a website that's called the anti-depression bangle, and then I realized the FDA would sue me out the yin yang, so I didn't do anything with it. But I found that people who wore this bangle lost their depression. They took it off, it came back 5 minutes later, they put it on, and 5 minutes later it was gone. And in fact, I had a neighbor called Ed, a good friend of mine now, and we didn't know much then. I knocked on his door and I said, Ed, I want you to try this bangle, because I do a lot of research. And he said to me, Nick, I want to be seen dead wearing that thing. And I go, Ed, just wear it for me. He says, I'm not going to wear that down the beach. I said, take it off when you go to the beach. Don't worry about it. Just wear it. I'll be back in a month. So, okay, because we're friends. Okay, I will. So he wore the frequency bangle. And you'll see why he wouldn't be seen dead wearing it. It's kind of like that big. And he wanted to maintain his, heterogeneous reputation. And so anyway, I came back a month later, I knocked on his door, said, hey, Ed, can I have the bangle back? Because he saw me, and he was always quiet about it. And he said, no. I go, Ed, you said you didn't even want to wear it. He says, yeah, that was before I wore it. I said, so why did you change your mind? He said, well, basically, I never told you this, but I suffer from depression. And I noticed every time I took it on, my depression would go away, and when I took it off, it would come back. And he said, I got to buy it, you bastard. Those are his words. And he ended up buying it, and we're still friends. And he doesn't suffer from depression anymore. But if I took that, if I did make claims for it, this is a very legalistic world. You've got to be very careful with how you say things. And I'm not saying it fixes everyone's depression, it just fixes his depression. But that's an example of, I consider depression to be an electrical disease, where you can be the most beautiful person in the world, the greatest thoughts, have all the right ideals, but there's an electrical heaviness in your consciousness that just pulls in that depression. And you need Shakti, you need energy to lift it, and you need something that's constant. And I'm not saying crystals are the only way to do it. I'm a big believer in pulsed electromagnetic frequencies. There's obviously many different modalities that work for different people. The difference again is this is my speciality, and it's passive. It's very easy to wear something, or around the neck or on the arm, as close to the brain as possible. The physical body, in my research, gets in the way of the efficiency of the crystals and the metals, which is why you want to wear the crystals and the metals as close to the brain as possible. I've done generally, like with frequency bangle, I had 50 to 70 people wear them before I kind of understood what was going on and how to make them, and what worked and why it worked. And most experiments I do are failures, but consciousness measures consciousness. People know what they feel, and I listen to the commonalities of those statements. They don't talk to each other. So when one person says, you know, I find this calming and I sleep better, and the next person says that, something similar, you think you're onto something, and it's very exciting. Unfortunately, you can't prove this in a lab. You can't it's not a material empirical science in that sense. And so most of my clients, for instance, are, you know, the man gets one and he gets married and he wants his wife to have one because she'll be calmer and he knows she'll be happier wearing it, and because he's happier wearing his. And that's fortunately how my business has evolved from the internet. And but again, I want to say, you know, if there's a takeaway from this meeting, I want us to realize that we're remotely controlled in a predestined pattern of karma, and it's all waveform, it's all magnetic. Now, what I haven't touched on is, why do gems mitigate or nullify karma? So this is what Yogananda said. He said, the planets have no interest in us. They don't know we exist. They have no conscious agenda with us, but they act as catalysts for our karma. And how they do that is, all the planets have a magnetosphere, and meaning that they emanate a waveform into the vacuum of outer space. And you can see the magnetospheres on Saturn and Jupiter and Mars, because you can see, just as this planet has the aurora borealis in the North Pole and the aurora australis in the South Pole, where you get those amazing atmospheric colors with the electrons, that's kind of showing a visibility of the magnetosphere. But because those magnetospheres throw out an ever-going radiation field into the vacuum of space, a vacuum has zero resistance. Jupiter is 480 million miles, 460 million miles on average in its orbit away from the Earth. It's 130 times bigger than the Earth, so it's a big gas planet. But it's radiating a waveform into outer space, into the solar system. Now, again, because it's a vacuum, there's zero resistance. That's the nature of a vacuum. There's nothing there. It just keeps going. Now, it would be influenced by the solar radiation, because the sun's, 1.3 million times bigger than the Earth. And it's a very dominant planet, but its distance makes a difference, 93 million miles. So you've got this radiation, you've got this magnetosphere radiating its waveform to the Earth, where most of us seem to be. And the magnetosphere of our Earth dilutes it a little bit, but then it penetrates your electrical body. Now, what happens? Say it's Jupiter in a very well-placed position. It's got 65 moons, Jupiter. Okay, so they must make a little bit of a difference too. Now, it might be in a particular house, it might be behind another planet, it could be conjunct another planet. All transits are different. There's an endless array of vibrations coming from the planets depending on their movements. If you've done something in the past that has the same vibration, the same harmonic as that specific placement of Jupiter, you might win the lotto. There's 900 million now, by the way. Well, no, it's nearly a billion, probably a billion. Everyone leaves the room and buys a ticket. Yeah. Anyway, the thing is, it's all about harmonics. Yogananda explained that the planetary radiation acts like a catalyst to manifest the karma, to pull it out. Now, if you're wearing a specific metal or gemstone touching the skin that's supplementing the waveform pattern of your electrical body in a benign manner, there might not be a harmonic. You might not be, there might not be a catalytic event for that karma if it's a lower vibration negative event. And that's how gemstones mitigate or nullify karma. It's all about electromagnetism. It's all about waveform harmonics or resonance. We all know that when you pluck an E string on a guitar and there's another guitar in the room that's tuned properly, the sound wave travels across the room and that E string starts vibrating. That's resonance. And that's what we're doing. We resonate. You know how, in relationships, as I was talking to a lady, she says, I always pick the wrong men. Well, she resonates to that. You know, she resonates. And then it's only afterwards she realizes that she does it. But she wouldn't recognize the right man if she met one, because she just resonates to the wrong person. You know, all our actions carry a vibration. If we've done some things wrong in our past, we take a decade later can make the wrong decisions because we're still resonating to what we've done. And so karmically, when you uplift, like I've said this already today, when you uplift your karmic signature, the matrix of vibrations in your consciousness field, things that you used to be attracted to that aren't so good for you change. You're just not, you haven't got the same pull. And so all those little ways of how karma is mitigated and nullified. And there's the quote in the autobiography of a yogi, which I've already touched on, but I'll say the exact quote. It's consultation with saints, prayer, yoga meditation, willpower, astrological bangles and herbs can mitigate or nullify the negative effects of past actions. It's in a chapter of the autobiography of a yogi called Outwitting the Stars. And I guess I've got a devious nature. It really excited me because I like the idea of outwitting my karmic pattern, you know, because we've got a lot of karma, you know, and it's nice to flow through life. We've all know the story of having a friend of a friend or a friend, and they have a perfect diet, perfect exercise program. They live absolutely by the book, health-wise, and badly get cancer. And they weren't vaccinated, you know, and then that's karma. The planets were interacting with their electrical field. Now, Swami Sri Yukteswar explains that there's 5 different types of electricity in the body. So it gets pretty complicated because every form of electricity will have its own frequency. And, you know, to understand the whole science is, you know, beyond my pay grade. But I understand the basics of what can help. And I think we reached a stage where if anyone wants to answer a question, my friend Vic will answer them.
I taught him everything he knows. He's doing okay for a student.
So has anyone got any questions? Come on, the bravest one amongst you. You've got a question. I think you have. No, you don't? Okay. Yeah, don't look at the man behind you. Yeah, great, okay.
So how important is knowing your moment of birth in this scientific research?
Relatively important, not necessarily to the day for what I do. A good Vedic astrologer will ask you key questions about your life when you got married, when perhaps someone died, or, you know, major events in your life. He'll do something called a rectification by analyzing past transits. And I had a profound experience once I'll share. And my mum, I'd say, Mum, what time of day was I born? She'd go, 4 o'clock. Yeah, I go, okay. And then I ask her a couple of years later, I say, Mum, what time was I born? 6:15. And I go, Mum, are you sure? She said, I should know, I was there. I was like, okay, well, thanks, Mum. And I didn't press it any further. So I was getting a reading by a very famous astrologer called Chakrapani, who was quite remarkable. He didn't even need a computer program. He knew where all the planets were in his head from your time of birth. And he was given a boon by this amazing saint called Nityananda, who was a Naga sadhu, walked around naked in India and did all these miracles. Fabulous stories about him. And the word was that Nityananda gave him a boon. And the boon gave him this talent to be an amazing Vedic astrologer. And I believe it. He was really pretty good and nailed things in my life that no other astrologers touched upon. So anyway, I had to do a rectification for me. And he went through asking me questions, he gave me a rectification. And then afterwards, I was down on the beach in Malibu. It was late at night. I was just meditating. And I had thought, this is how Mahatmas can be. I had a thought, I wonder if Nityananda helped Chakrapani give me an accurate rectification. And the moment I thought that, it was like I got hit in the forehead. And it was like, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, of course you did. And that's what a Mahatma can do. You know, they're omniscient. They're full consciousness everywhere. And so for a gemstone recommendation, you can just go to the middle of the day. You know, it's not critical. For Ayurvedic astrological jewelry, you're not predicting exactly when the snake's going to bite you, which day, and stuff like that, you know. And that brings me to a story. I like talking about different saints. And I was in India and we were videoing these devotees of this saint that no one's heard of. And there's just miracle after miracle after miracle. And he was sitting in the temple and they were singing a bhajan. He called one of the men over and he said, okay, I want you to get your son and bring him to me. And it was late at night. And then he went into his hut and saw the hut. It's literally a stick hut, nothing very fancy. And he drew a white circle in lime powder, I guess, in the middle of the hut. He said to the son, I want you to stand there all night. Don't leave that circle. Whatever you do, don't leave that circle. And then the lamp was on, but he kind of rolled over and went to sleep. And the son was standing there going, well, this is different, you know, wondering what's going on. And a snake came into the hut. And it was a cobra, and they're terrified of them in India. And it made a beeline for the sun. And just as it got to the white line, it burst into flames. And the saint sort of kind of rolled over to see what was going on. And the son was terrified. And the snake was going around, wasn't interested in the saint. It was going around the white line of fire. And then the saint's just watching it. And then the cobra figured out that if it climbed up a pole and went into the ceiling, it could drop down into the circle. So it starts climbing up the pole. And the saint said in Hindi, I'm sure, you don't want to do that. And the saint stopped. And then it slithered down and it left the hut. And then the saint went back to sleep. Well, the next morning, the boy had something to tell his dad. You know, he told him the story. And the father said to the saint, who they call Bapu, you know, Bapji, you know, can you explain, like, why this happened? And thank you so much, but why did it happen? Like, in other words, my boy wouldn't have been in that hut if you hadn't made him standing there. And he said, yeah, it's quite simple. Your son was predestined to be killed by snake bite last night. So I just thought I'd help you out. Wow. And you know, that's kind of what saints do. When you say, they'll bless you, but you don't generally know you're being blessed. They're so humble, they don't want to be shown to be the cause of mitigating your karma. You know, that's kind of the thing with it. Any other questions? Yay, over there.
I was just gonna ask if the like wearing the metal and the gems, is that a lot like mental too? Like when you're wearing them?
Like the placebo effect, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot here.
Well, that's obviously a good question, and one that I'm accused of, you could say. And then definitely, when you look at the crystal movement, there's a huge amount of placebo going on, with people thinking that this stone, you know, does that, and that stone does this, and it doesn't really happen, you know. That said, certain benefits do occur. I mean, I'm a great admirer of Edgar Cayce. I don't know, everyone know here Edgar Cayce?
Sure.
Great. And well, Edgar Cayce was formidable because he was recommending chiropractic in the 1930s and yoga asanas and gems and minerals for people who he found by tapping into their Akashic record from a distance. He was a genuine psychic. And I stress that word, genuine. Thank you. Yeah. And has everyone worn the silver chain? Yeah? Okay. Now, let's just quickly ask, in answer to your question, I haven't said anything about the silver chain, so I can't be accused of programming anyone. Did you wear the silver chain?
I did.
Did you feel anything?
I did.
What I should do is have everyone write it down, but I'm not. Just keep to your thoughts. Don't hear it. What did you feel?
It felt like fuzzy to me. It felt very like energetic. It made me feel like I had just drank coffee.
Okay. And what did you feel? Oh, don't want to be dishonest.
Well, yeah.
It's the same dishonesty. And
I felt my heart racing fast.
your heart rate went faster. Don't have to feel anything. It's okay.
No, I think I was so into what you were saying. I didn't pay attention to my body. I was in my head listening to you, what
Okay.
you were explaining at the time, that I put it on and didn't pay attention to my body.
Fair enough.
Sorry.
Fair enough.
I have
You
it.
already have one, yeah?
It actually keeps me very calm.
Right. You don't have one.
Not yet.
So, good.
I think just a little more grounded. Just at
Okay.
ease.
But you felt something. That's what I want. Now, I won't go through everyone because we've got time limited. But essentially, pure silver has a similar harmonic waveform to the moon. And when you have a debilitated moon, then it's going to be calming. Now, sometimes when you wear something, just like she said, it's like buzzing, you get the moment you put on something into your electrical field, you get a transitional experience where sometimes it can actually be disconcerting. You know something's going on, but whoa, I'm not sure if this is good. And then when you're integrated, it becomes more familiar and more comfortable. But I've had spectacular results with pure silver. Whereas you can't wear pure copper necklace. That's quite agitating. But you can wear copper on your wrist. So there's a whole science behind where you can wear certain materials to how you can benefit from them. But anyway, I do want them back, by the way. I don't know. Stand by the door, bit. Metal detector on them.
Yeah.
But it's actually very, very rare to wear a pure silver chain because all the silver chains are sterling, which is an alloy, which has actually a negative vibration. You put zinc and copper in there. It's like adding a teaspoon of salt to a gallon of water. It's a very different material. And, the vibration is a very specific thing, whether it's beneficial or not. If you'd like to pursue the subject further and see how it can influence your life beneficially, go to astrogems.com, fill out the free horoscope form to get a customized chart, which will also include the most beneficial gemstones to minimize your karma.